The woman's blue lips moved silently as she sank into the snowdrift, her arms locked around the bundle of blankets that held her infant son. And in that moment between consciousness and death, she wondered if anyone would find them before the Wyoming winter claimed them both. Warren Nichols had been riding fence line for 3 days straight, checking the barbed wire boundaries of the ranch where he worked as foreman. The December wind cut through his sheepskin coat like a blade, and his horse, a sturdy bay mare named Dancer, fought him at every turn, wanting nothing more than to head back to the warmth of the barn. It was 1884, and this winter was shaping up to be one of the worst Warren had seen in his 26 years. The snow had started falling 2 days ago and showed no signs of stopping. He should have turned back yesterday, but the cattle were scattered across thousands of acres, and predators always came down from the mountains when the weather turned harsh. He was considering making camp in a grove of pine trees when Dancer suddenly stopped, her ears pricked forward, nostrils flaring. Warren trusted his horse's instincts more than his own sometimes. He squinted through the driving snow, seeing nothing but white upon white. Then Dancer took 3 steps forward without prompting, and Warren saw it, a dark shape against the pristine snow. Too small to be a cow, too still to be alive. His heart kicked up as he urged Dancer closer. The shape resolved into a woman, collapsed on her side, her dark hair spreading across the snow like spilled ink. Her arms were wrapped around something, clutching it to her chest with the fierce determination of a mother protecting her young. Warren was off his horse before he'd fully thought it through, his boots sinking into snow up to his knees. "Madam," he said, dropping beside her, his gloved hands already checking for a pulse at her throat. He found it faint and slow, but there. "Thank God. Madam, can you hear me?" Her eyes flickered open, unfocused, the color of storm clouds. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Then the bundle in her arms moved, and a weak cry pierced the howling wind. A baby. She had a baby with her. Warren didn't waste time on questions. He could see the blue tinge to her skin, the way her body had curled around the child to protect it from the elements. She'd been out here too long. Another hour and they both would have been dead. He gathered the woman into his arms, careful not to dislodge the baby she held. She was light, too light, and he could feel her bones through her thin coat. What was she doing out here with nothing but a cotton dress and a worn jacket? Where had she come from? Those questions would have to wait. Right now, he needed to get them somewhere warm and fast. The line shack was a mile back the way he'd come, a rough cabin the ranch hands used during roundup and fence mending. It wasn't much, but it had a stove and firewood and walls that would block the wind. Warren lifted the woman and child onto Dancer's saddle, then swung up behind them, keeping one arm wrapped around them to hold them secure. The woman's head lolled against his chest, and he could barely feel her breathing. "Stay with me," he said, though he wasn't sure she could hear him. "Just hold on a little longer." Dancer seemed to understand the urgency. She pushed through the snow with renewed purpose, her powerful legs eating up the distance. Warren kept his body curved around the woman and child, trying to share what warmth he had. The baby had stopped crying, which worried him more than the crying had. Silence could mean the cold was winning. The line shack appeared through the snow like a miracle, its rough log walls promising sanctuary. Warren dismounted in a rush, pulling the woman and baby down with him. He kicked the door open. It wasn't locked. Nothing out here was, and carried them inside. The interior was dim and cold, but at least the wind couldn't reach them here. He laid the woman on the single bunk, pulling the thin blankets over her, then went to work on the stove. His hands shook as he stuffed kindling and newspaper into the firebox, struck a match. The paper caught, The kindling began to crackle, and he added larger pieces of split wood. Smoke curled up the chimney pipe. Heat would follow soon. Only then did he turn back to the woman and child. The baby was still wrapped in blankets, still held tight in the mother's frozen arms. Warren had to pry her fingers open, gently but firmly, to take the child. The baby was a boy, he saw, maybe 3 or 4 months old, with a round face and wisps of dark hair. His lips were pale, his breathing shallow, but he was alive. Warren had grown up the youngest of 6, had helped his mother with his baby sister enough to know the basics. He checked the baby over, looking for frostbite on the tiny fingers and toes, the delicate nose and ears. Everything looked intact, thank God. The mother's body heat and the layers of blankets had protected the child. Warren wrapped the baby in his own wool scarf, holding the small body against his chest as he turned his attention to the mother. She was young, he realized, maybe 20 or 21, with delicate features and dark lashes that lay like crescents against her pale cheeks. Her hair was nearly black, her lips bloodless. He needed to get her warm, but he knew enough about hypothermia to know he had to be careful. Too much heat too fast could be as dangerous as the cold. He pulled off her wet boots, her thin stockings, rubbing her frozen feet between his hands. Her toes were white, worryingly so, but he didn't see the waxy appearance that would indicate severe frostbite. He did the same with her hands, chafing them gently, trying to restore circulation. All the while, the baby stayed quiet against his chest, and Warren found himself talking to keep the fear at bay. "You're both going to be all right," he said, to himself as much as to them. "The storm will break and I'll get you to town to the doctor. You just have to hold on." The stove was pumping out heat now, turning the small cabin warm. Warren found a tin cup and went to the door, scooping it full of clean snow. He set it on the stove to melt. The woman would need water when she woke up, if she woke up. He pulled the single chair close to the bunk and sat, the baby still tucked against him. The child's eyes were closed, his breathing evening out into the peaceful rhythm of sleep. Warren watched the woman's face, willing her to open her eyes, to show some sign of consciousness. An hour passed. 2. The storm raged outside, rattling the shutters, howling down the chimney. The cabin stayed warm. Warren gave the baby a few drops of water from a clean handkerchief, and the child sucked at it automatically. It wasn't milk, but it was something. Finally, as darkness fell outside, the woman stirred. Her eyelids fluttered, and a small sound escaped her lips. Warren leaned forward, the baby shifting against him. "Madam, can you hear me?" Her eyes opened, unfocused at first, then sharpening with sudden panic. She tried to sit up, her hand reaching out. "Thomas," she gasped. "My baby, where is my baby?" "He's right here," Warren said quickly, turning so she could see the bundle against his chest. "He's safe. You're both safe." The panic in her eyes eased, replaced by relief so profound it seemed to take the last of her strength. Tears spilled down her cheeks. "Thomas," she whispered again. "He's fine," Warren assured her. "Cold but fine. You got him through it, you kept him warm." She closed her eyes, the tears still coming. "I thought we were going to die. I prayed someone would find us, but the snow just kept falling." "What happened?" Warren asked gently. "What are you doing out here?" She was quiet for a long moment, and he thought she might have fallen asleep again. Then she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "My husband died 2 weeks ago, pneumonia. We had a homestead 5 miles south of here. I tried to keep going, but without him, I couldn't manage the place alone with a baby. I decided to go to town, to Watsonville, to see if I could find work. But the wagon wheel broke a mile into the journey. I tried to walk, but the snow started and I got turned around. I couldn't find the road anymore. I just kept walking, trying to keep Thomas warm." Her voice broke. "I failed. I almost killed my son." "You didn't fail," Warren said firmly. "You survived. You kept your son alive. That's not failing." She opened her eyes again, really looking at him for the first time. He saw intelligence in those gray eyes and a strength that the ordeal hadn't quite broken. "Thank you," she said. "You saved our lives. I don't even know your name." "Warren Nichols. I'm foreman at the Triple Bar Ranch. This is one of our line shacks." "I'm Catherine Foster," she said. "Kate. Well, Kate Foster, you're going to rest now, and when the storm breaks I'll take you to town. But first I think this little one needs his mother." He carefully transferred the baby to her, and Kate gathered Thomas to her chest with a sob of relief, pressing her lips to his forehead, breathing in his scent. Warren looked away, giving her privacy for the moment, busying himself with heating up some of the canned beans and hardtack he found in the cabin's supplies. They ate in relative silence, Kate managing a few spoonfuls of beans before exhaustion claimed her again. Warren took Thomas back, letting Kate sleep properly. The baby fussed a bit, hungry, and Warren felt helpless. He had no milk to give the child, nothing but water. He could only hope the storm would break soon so they could get to town, but the storm didn't break. It raged on through the night and into the next day, piling snow against the cabin walls, burying the world in white. Warren kept the fire going, rationed the food, and cared for Kate and Thomas as best he could. Kate grew stronger as the hours passed, the warmth and rest restoring her. She was able to sit up, to talk, and Warren learned her story in pieces. She'd come west with her husband Jacob 3 years ago, both of them filled with dreams of making a life on their own land. They'd filed a homestead claim and worked themselves to the bone trying to prove it up. Then Thomas had come along, an unexpected blessing that had made the hard work seem worthwhile. But the isolation had been difficult, and when Jacob fell ill, there had been no one to help, no doctor within a day's ride. He died in their soddy with only Kate and baby Thomas by his side. "I didn't know what to do," Kate said, staring into the fire. "I had no family out here, no friends close by. The nearest neighbor is 10 miles away, and I've only met them twice. I thought if I could just get to town, I could find work, maybe as a seamstress or a cook. I can work hard." "I'm not afraid of hard work." Warren listened, his respect for this young woman growing with every word. She'd been through hell, but there was no self-pity in her voice, only determination. "You'll find something," he said. "Watsonville isn't big, but there are good people there. Someone will help." "You already have," Kate said, looking at him with those steady gray eyes. "I won't forget that, Mr. Nichols." "Warren," he said. "Just Warren." A small smile touched her lips, the first he'd seen from her. It transformed her face, made her beautiful despite the hardship written in every line. "Warren, then." The storm broke on the 3rd day. Warren woke to silence, the absence of wind so profound it seemed loud in itself. He rose from the chair where he'd been dozing, his back protesting the awkward angle, and opened the door. The world outside was transformed, everything buried under 3 feet of fresh snow, the sky a brilliant blue overhead. The air was bitterly cold but still. "We can leave today," he said, turning to Kate. She was awake, nursing Thomas under the privacy of a blanket. "The ranch is closer than town. We should go there first. You and Thomas need real food, and the ranch house has everything you'll need." Kate looked uncertain. "I don't want to impose." "It's not imposing. The ranch owner, Mr. Henry, he's a good man. His wife passed 5 years back, but he's got a housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, who'll help you get sorted. They won't turn away a woman and child in need." After a moment, Kate nodded. "All right, thank you." The journey to the ranch took most of the day, Dancer struggling through the deep snow with her triple burden. Warren walked alongside much of the way, breaking trail, his legs burning with effort. Kate held Thomas, and Warren had wrapped them both in every blanket and piece of spare clothing he could find in the lined shack. The sky stayed clear, the sun bright but offering little warmth. The Triple Bar Ranch appeared in the distance as the sun was setting, golden light streaming across the snow, making everything glow. It was a prosperous spread, with a large main house, several barns, and a bunkhouse for the hands. Smoke rose from multiple chimneys, promising warmth and food and rest. Warren led them to the main house, helped Kate down from the saddle. She was unsteady on her feet after so long on horseback, and he kept a supporting arm around her as they climbed the porch steps. Before he could knock, the door swung open and Mrs. Chen stood there, her round face creased with concern. "Warren, thank goodness you're back. We thought the storm got you." Her eyes shifted to Kate and the baby, and her expression softened. "Oh, you poor dear, come in out of the cold." Mrs. Chen ushered them inside, already calling for hot water and blankets and food. The warmth of the house enveloped them like an embrace. Warren felt the tension drain from his shoulders, the fear that had been his constant companion for 3 days finally easing. Mr. Henry emerged from his study, a tall man in his 60s with iron-gray hair and kind eyes. He took in the situation with a glance and nodded approvingly at Warren. "Good work, son. Let's get them settled." Within an hour, Kate and Thomas were installed in one of the guest rooms, fed and warm and safe. A doctor had been sent for, though he wouldn't arrive until tomorrow given the snow. Mrs. Chen had taken charge of Kate and the baby with the fierce protectiveness of a mother hen, providing a hot bath, clean clothes, and proper milk for Thomas that she'd warmed from the ranch's dairy cows. Warren finally had a chance to clean up himself, washing away 3 days of grime and changing into fresh clothes from his room in the bunkhouse. But he found himself drawn back to the main house, checking on Kate and Thomas one more time before he could rest. He found Kate in the parlor, Thomas asleep in her arms, staring into the fireplace. She'd been given one of Mrs. Chen's dresses, too large but clean, and her hair was washed and braided. She looked up when he entered, and that small smile appeared again. "I wanted to thank you properly," she said. "I know I already said it, but words don't seem enough. You gave us our lives back." Warren sat in the chair across from her, suddenly aware of how tired he was. Anyone would have done the same. "Maybe," Kate said, "but you're the one who was there. You're the one who didn't give up on us, even when it meant being trapped in that cabin for 3 days. I won't forget that." They talked late into the night, the fire burning low, the house quiet around them. Warren learned more about Kate, her life before Wyoming, her dreams for Thomas's future. She'd grown up in Ohio, the daughter of a schoolteacher, and had married Jacob when she was 18, swept up in his enthusiasm for the West. She'd been happy, despite the hardships, until pneumonia had stolen her husband and left her alone. Kate asked about Warren too, and he found himself telling her things he rarely shared. About growing up in Colorado, the youngest son of a rancher who'd lost everything in a bad winter when Warren was 15. About working his way up from horse wrangler to foreman through sheer determination. About the loneliness of ranch life, the long hours and hard work that left little time for anything else. "Don't you want more?" Kate asked softly. "A family of your own, I do," Warren admitted. "Someday, but it's hard to meet anyone out here. The few unmarried women in Watsonville are spoken for, and I'm not much for social gatherings anyway." Kate's smile turned knowing. "I suspect you're better at socializing than you think, Warren Nichols." The doctor arrived the next morning, a gruff older man named Dr. Matthews, who'd been practicing in Watsonville for 20 years. He examined both Kate and Thomas thoroughly, pronouncing them remarkably well considering their ordeal. Some minor frostbite on Kate's toes, but nothing that wouldn't heal. Thomas was healthy and thriving, already gaining back the weight he'd lost. "You're a lucky woman," Dr. Matthews told Kate. "Another hour in that snow and I'd be writing a very different report." "I know," Kate said quietly, glancing at Warren, who stood by the door. "I had a guardian angel watching over me." The days that followed fell into a comfortable rhythm. Kate stayed in the guest room, helping Mrs. Chen around the house in exchange for room and board. Mr. Henry had insisted she stay as long as she needed, at least until spring made travel easier. Warren found excuses to come to the main house more often than necessary, ostensibly to report to Mr. Henry but really to see Kate and Thomas. He watched Kate with her son, the gentle way she cared for him, the love that shone in every touch. He watched her help Mrs. Chen with cooking and mending, never idle, always contributing. She had a quick laugh and a sharp wit, and she didn't shy away from the realities of ranch life. She asked intelligent questions about the cattle and horses, genuinely interested in learning. Warren felt himself falling, slowly at first, then all at once. It wasn't just Kate's beauty, though she was beautiful. It was her strength, her resilience, the way she faced hardship without complaint. It was the way she looked at him, like he was something more than just a ranch foreman. It was the way Thomas would calm when Warren held him, the baby's tiny hand wrapping around Warren's finger with trusting grip. But he held back, uncertain. Kate was a widow, still grieving her husband. She was vulnerable, dependent on the charity of strangers. Warren didn't want to take advantage of that. He didn't want her to feel obligated to him because he'd saved her life. Christmas came, a quiet celebration with just the household. Mrs. Chen roasted a goose, and they decorated the parlor with pine boughs and ribbons. Kate had sewn a small stuffed horse for Thomas from scraps of fabric, and Warren had carved a rattle from a piece of soft wood. Mr. Henry gave Kate a beautiful wool shawl, and Mrs. Chen gifted her a thick winter coat that had belonged to Mr. Henry's late wife. "It's too much," Kate protested, tears in her eyes. "I can't accept all this." "Nonsense," Mr. Henry said gruffly. "Eleanor would have wanted someone to have it, better you than a trunk in the attic." That evening, after Mr. Henry and Mrs. Chen had retired, Warren and Kate sat by the fire again. It had become their ritual, these quiet evenings talking while Thomas slept. Outside, fresh snow was falling, but inside all was warm and peaceful. "I've been thinking," Kate said, her voice hesitant, "about what I should do. Come spring, I mean." Warren's heart clenched. He'd been dreading this conversation. "Have you decided?" "Mr. Henry offered me a position as his housekeeper. Mrs. Chen is getting on in years and she could use help. He said I could stay in the guest house, the small cabin behind the barn. It would be perfect for Thomas and me, a real home, steady work." "That sounds good," Warren said, trying to keep his voice neutral even as relief flooded through him. She was staying. She wasn't leaving. "Is it, though?" Kate turned to look at him, her gray eyes serious. "Warren, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." "All right." "These past few weeks, the time we've spent together, has it meant anything to you? Or am I just someone you rescued, someone you feel responsible for?" Warren's breath caught. He set down his coffee cup carefully, buying time. "Kate, because it's meant something to me," she continued, the words coming faster now, as if she had to get them out before she lost her courage. "More than it probably should, given that Jacob's only been gone 2 months. I know it's too soon. I know I should still be in mourning, but I can't help what I feel, and I feel like I need to know if there's any chance you might feel the same way." Warren looked at her, this brave, beautiful woman who'd faced death and come through it stronger. "I do," he said simply. "I feel the same way. I have for weeks now, but I didn't want to push, didn't want you to think I expected anything because of what happened." The smile that broke across Kate's face was like sunrise. "You wonderful fool. You saved my life. If anything, I'm the one who feels obligated." "You're not," Warren said quickly. "Kate, you don't owe me anything. If we do this, if we see where this goes, it has to be because we both want it, not because of debts or gratitude." "I want it," Kate said. "I want to see where this goes. Is that wrong? Is it too soon after Jacob?" Warren thought about it carefully before answering. "I think only you can answer that. Did you love your husband?" "Yes," Kate said without hesitation. "I loved him. He was a good man and we were happy. His death broke my heart." "Then no, it's not wrong. He's gone, Kate, and you're still here. You're allowed to live, to be happy again. I think any man who truly loved you would want that for you." Kate nodded slowly, wiping at her eyes. "Jacob would have liked you, I think. He always admired hard workers, honest men. I would have liked him too then." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, but something had shifted between them. The air felt charged, full of possibility. Finally, Warren stood and offered Kate his hand. She took it, rising, and they stood close enough that he could smell the lavender soap she'd used. "Can I court you properly?" Warren asked. "The right way, with time to grieve and heal, no rushing." "Yes," Kate whispered. "I'd like that very much." He kissed her forehead, gentle and chaste, a promise of more to come. "Then that's what we'll do." The winter months passed in a blur of quiet joy. Warren courted Kate the old-fashioned way, with walks when the weather permitted, long conversations by the fire, small gifts and stolen glances. He brought her wildflowers he'd pressed between the pages of books, keeping them fresh. He carved toys for Thomas, delighting in the baby's giggles. He was patient, never pushing for more than Kate was ready to give. Kate bloomed under the attention. The haunted look that had shadowed her eyes faded, replaced by genuine happiness. She laughed more, sang while she worked, played with Thomas in the snow. She took to ranch life naturally, learning to ride, helping with the spring calving, proving herself capable of anything she set her mind to. The other ranch hands accepted her easily, charmed by her warmth and work ethic. They treated Thomas like a mascot. The baby passed from hand to hand at meal times, cooed over and spoiled. Kate fit into the ranch family like she'd always been there. Mr. Henry watched it all with approval, often remarking to Warren that he'd done well finding such a fine woman. Mrs. Chen was more direct, telling Warren flat out that if he didn't marry Kate soon, he was a fool. Spring arrived in a rush of melt water and green shoots. The ranch came alive with new calves and foals, with the bustle of preparing for the summer grazing season. Warren was busier than ever, up before dawn and working past sunset most days. But he always found time for Kate and Thomas, even if it was just an hour in the evening. One warm May evening, Warren asked Kate to walk with him. They left Thomas with Mrs. Chen, who was always happy to babysit, and headed out across the pasture toward a small rise that overlooked the valley. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. New grass carpeted the ground, dotted with wildflowers. At the top of the rise, Warren stopped and turned to Kate. She looked beautiful in the fading light, her dark hair loose around her shoulders, her gray eyes clear and bright. She'd filled out over the winter, no longer the half-starved woman he'd found in the snow. She was healthy and strong and so lovely it made his chest ache. "Kate," he said, taking both her hands in his. "I know it's only been 6 months. I know some folks might say it's too soon, that we should wait longer, but I've never been more sure of anything in my life than I am about this." He dropped to one knee, pulling a small box from his pocket. Inside was a simple gold band, nothing fancy but honest and true. "I love you. I love Thomas. I want to build a life with you, raise that boy and maybe give him some brothers and sisters. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep beside you every night. Will you marry me?" Kate's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. "Yes," she said. "Yes, Warren, I'll marry you. I love you too. You gave me back my life, and now I want to share that life with you." Warren slipped the ring onto her finger and stood, pulling her into his arms. Their first real kiss was sweet and tender and full of promise, the sun setting around them, the valley spreading out below like a blessing. They were married a month later in a simple ceremony at the small church in Watsonville. Mr. Henry gave Kate away, and Mrs. Chen cried happy tears throughout the service. The ranch hands all attended, cleaned up and on their best behavior, and half the town turned out to see the foreman marry the woman he'd saved from the snow. Kate wore a dress Mrs. Chen had helped her make, simple white cotton with lace at the collar and cuffs. She carried wildflowers, and Thomas, now nearly a year old, sat in Mrs. Chen's lap during the ceremony, babbling happily. When the preacher pronounced them man and wife, the church erupted in cheers and applause. Mr. Henry had given them the small guest house as a wedding gift, along with a raise for Warren and the promise that when Mr. Henry eventually retired, Warren would be offered the chance to buy the ranch. It was more than Warren had ever dreamed of, more than he'd thought possible for a ranch hand from Colorado with nothing but his skills and determination. But the greatest gift was Kate herself. As they set up their home together, mixing her few possessions with his, Warren marveled at how right it all felt. Kate hung curtains and arranged furniture, making the small cabin into a real home. She cooked meals at the little stove, mended his clothes, filled the space with laughter and love. Thomas took to calling Warren Papa before his first birthday, and Warren's heart swelled every time he heard it. He taught the boy to ride, holding him secure on a gentle old mare, pointing out cattle and horses and explaining ranch work in simple terms the child couldn't possibly understand but seemed to enjoy anyway. Kate thrived as Warren's wife. She continued helping Mrs. Chen at the main house, but now had her own domain to manage too. She planted a vegetable garden behind the cabin, started a small flock of chickens, made friends with the other ranch wives at church socials. She was happy, truly happy, and it showed in every smile, every laugh, every tender look she gave Warren. Their marriage bed was a place of joy and discovery. Kate had been married before, but she confessed to Warren that she'd never known it could be like this, so tender and passionate at once. Warren worshipped her with his body, patient and attentive, and Kate bloomed under his touch, growing confident in her own desires. They loved each other thoroughly and well, and when Kate discovered she was pregnant that fall, neither was surprised. The news brought complicated emotions for Kate. She was thrilled to be carrying Warren's child, but she felt guilty too, as if she were somehow being disloyal to Jacob's memory. Warren held her while she cried, letting her work through the emotions without judgment. "Thomas will always be Jacob's son," Warren said gently. "I'm not trying to replace his father, but I'm his papa now, and I'll love him just as much as any child we have together. And Jacob, wherever he is, I think he'd be glad you found someone to take care of you and his son. Love isn't a finite resource, Kate. You can love the past and the present both." Kate clung to him, grateful for his understanding. "I do love you," she whispered. "So much. You're everything I could have hoped for and more." The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Kate stayed active, helping around the ranch until she got too big to move comfortably. Warren fussed over her, earning him teasing from the ranch hands but Kate's grateful smiles. Thomas, now a toddler, seemed to understand something important was happening, patting Kate's growing belly and saying "baby" with great seriousness. Their daughter was born on a cold February night in 1886, 2 years almost to the day from when Warren had found Kate in the snow. Dr. Matthews attended the birth, as did Mrs. Chen, and Warren paced the floor of the main house wearing a track in Mr. Henry's good rug. When the baby's first cry split the air, Warren nearly collapsed with relief. Mrs. Chen emerged to tell him he had a healthy daughter and Kate was doing well. Warren rushed into the room to find Kate propped up in bed, exhausted but glowing, the baby nestled in her arms. The infant had a cap of dark hair and Kate's delicate features, and when she opened her eyes they were blue like Warren's. "She's perfect," Warren breathed, touching one tiny hand with his finger. The baby's grip was surprisingly strong. "You're perfect. Thank you, Kate." "Thank you for her, for Thomas, for everything." "Thank you," Kate said, tears of joy streaming down her face, "for saving us, for loving us, for giving us this life." They named the baby Ruth after Warren's mother. Thomas was enchanted with his baby sister, wanting to hold her constantly, bringing her his toys, singing to her in his off-key toddler voice. Warren watched his growing family with a sense of wonder that never quite faded. How had he gotten so lucky? The years flowed by like water, each season bringing its own joys and challenges. The ranch prospered under Warren's management, the herd growing, the land improving. Mr. Henry relied on Warren more and more, essentially retired in all but name. Warren proved himself a natural leader, fair but firm with the hands, shrewd in his business dealings, innovative in his ranching methods. Kate became known throughout the county as a woman of grace and intelligence. She hosted dinners for neighboring ranchers, organized charity drives for families in need, taught Sunday school at the church. She never forgot what it was like to be desperate and alone, and she made sure no widow or orphan in Watsonville ever felt abandoned if she could help it. Thomas grew into a bright, energetic boy, all curiosity and energy. He followed Warren everywhere, learning ranch work from the time he could sit a horse. Warren taught him reading and arithmetic in the evenings. Kate instructed him in history and literature. And between them, they gave the boy an education that would serve him well. Thomas never knew Jacob, but Kate kept his father's memory alive with stories, and Warren made sure the boy knew he came from good stock. Ruth was her mother's daughter, quick-witted and strong-willed. She toddled after Thomas, determined to do everything her big brother did, much to everyone's amusement. She had no fear, climbing fences and chasing chickens, covered in mud more often than not. Warren doted on her shamelessly, unable to deny his little girl anything. When Ruth was 3, Kate found herself pregnant again. This time there were no complicated emotions, only joy. Their son was born in the spring of 1889, a robust baby with a powerful set of lungs. They named him William, and he completed their family in a way none of them had known was missing. In 1890, Mr. Henry passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 72. He left the Triple Bar Ranch to Warren, as he'd promised, with provisions for Mrs. Chen to live out her days in comfort in the main house. Warren wept at the funeral, mourning the man who'd given him his chance, who'd treated him like a son. As the new owner of the Triple Bar, Warren moved his family into the main house. It felt strange at first, living in the big rooms where he'd once reported for orders. But Kate made it home, filling it with love and laughter and the chaos of 3 children. Mrs. Chen stayed on, more family than employee now, grandmother to the children in all but blood. Warren proved himself worthy of Mr. Henry's faith. Under his ownership, the Triple Bar became one of the most successful ranches in Wyoming. He treated his hands fairly, paying good wages and ensuring decent living conditions. He was the first rancher in the county to start rotating pastures to prevent overgrazing, and his cattle were known for their quality. He built a reputation as a man of his word, and his handshake was as good as any contract. But for all his success, Warren's greatest pride was his family. Kate remained his partner in all things, her advice valued, her opinion sought. She managed the household accounts with skill, and Warren often said she had a better head for business than half the bankers in Watsonville. Their love had only deepened with time, weathering the storms of life, growing stronger with each passing year. Thomas grew into a fine young man, tall and serious, with his mother's intelligence and his father's work ethic. He talked about studying law, and Warren encouraged him, knowing the West needed educated men who understood both the old ways and the new. Ruth was 12 now, full of sass and spirit, already drawing the attention of boys despite Warren's fierce protectiveness. William was 6, all energy and mischief, keeping everyone on their toes. One winter evening in 1895, 11 years after Warren had found Kate in the snow, the family gathered in the parlor. Outside, snow was falling, but inside all was warm and bright. Warren sat in his favorite chair, William on his lap, reading from a book of adventure stories. Kate was helping Ruth with her needlework, though Ruth was far more interested in the dime novel she'd hidden under her embroidery. Thomas was at the desk, working on an essay for his studies. Mrs. Chen brought in hot chocolate for everyone, and Thomas looked up from his work, his face thoughtful. "Papa," he said, and Warren still felt a surge of love every time Thomas called him that. "Tell us again about the day you found Mama and me." Warren glanced at Kate, who smiled and nodded. It was a story the children never tired of hearing, though they must have heard it 100 times. "Well," Warren began, setting aside the adventure book, "it was the worst blizzard I'd ever seen. Snow coming down so thick you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. I was ready to make camp and waited out when Dancer, my horse, she suddenly stopped. Her ears went up and I knew she'd sensed something." William squirmed with excitement, knowing what came next. "And you found Mama?" "I did. Your Mama was lying in the snow, and at first I thought I was too late. But then I felt her pulse, and I knew she was still fighting. And she had you, Thomas, wrapped up so tight in blankets, keeping you warm even though she was freezing herself." Thomas smiled, a bit embarrassed but pleased. "And you carried us to the line shack." "The longest mile of my life," Warren said. "I was so afraid I'd lose you both, but your Mama is strong. She held on. She kept you safe until I could get you both warm." "And then you fell in love," Ruth said, in the dramatic tone of a girl who'd read too many romantic stories. "And then we fell in love," Kate agreed, reaching over to squeeze Warren's hand. "Though it took a while. Your papa is a gentleman. He courted me properly." "I don't understand why you had to court her if you'd already saved her life," William said, frowning. "Shouldn't she have just married you right away?" Everyone laughed, and Warren ruffled his youngest son's hair. "It doesn't work quite like that, son. You can't rush love. It has to grow naturally, like a garden. Your Mama and I took our time, made sure we were right for each other." "But you were right for each other," Thomas said. "Anyone can see that." "We were," Warren agreed, looking at Kate. Even after 11 years of marriage, 13 years since that day in the snow, she could still make his heart skip a beat. "We are. Best decision I ever made, marrying your mother." "Best decision I ever made, too," Kate said softly. "Well, second best. The best decision was not giving up that day in the snow, fighting to stay alive for Thomas. If I'd given up, I never would have met you." Later, after the children were in bed and Mrs. Chen had retired to her room, Warren and Kate stood together at the window, watching the snow fall. Warren wrapped his arms around Kate from behind, pulling her back against his chest. She fit perfectly, like she'd been made to be there. "You ever think about that day?" Warren asked quietly. "Really think about it, I mean. How close we came to never having all this." "Sometimes," Kate admitted. "It frightens me how easily everything could have gone differently. If the storm had been worse, if you'd taken a different path, if I'd fallen just a little farther from where you were riding. 1,000 tiny choices that led to you finding us." "Fate," Warren said. "It had to be. The hand of God," my mother would have said. "Maybe," Kate said. "Or maybe we were just lucky. Either way, I'm grateful. Every single day, Warren, I'm grateful. For you, for our children, for this life we've built together. I never dreamed I could be this happy." "Me either," Warren confessed. "Before you, I thought I'd end up like Mr. Henry, working the ranch until I was old, alone except for the hands and the cattle. You gave me so much more than I ever thought possible." Kate turned in his arms, looking up at him. In the lamplight, she looked hardly older than the young woman he'd found in the snow, though 11 years had passed and she'd borne him 2 children. She was still beautiful, still strong, still everything he'd ever wanted. "We gave each other that," Kate said. "This life, this love, we built it together. Equal partners, the way it should be." Warren kissed her then, a long, slow kiss full of love and promise and contentment. Outside, the snow continued to fall, blanketing the ranch in white. But inside there was nothing but warmth and love and the secure knowledge that they had built something lasting. The years continued to roll by in their steady rhythm. Thomas left for university in the East to study law, making his parents proud beyond measure. He wrote long letters home, describing his studies, the bustling cities, the different pace of life back east. But he always said he'd return to Wyoming eventually, that the West was in his blood. Ruth grew into a beautiful young woman, graduating from the finishing school in Denver that Warren had insisted she attend, despite her protests that she'd rather stay on the ranch. She returned home with polish and poise, but underneath, she was still the wild, fearless girl who'd climbed trees and ridden horses too fast. Young men came calling with increasing frequency, much to Warren's dismay and Kate's amusement. William showed signs of following in Warren's footsteps, more interested in cattle and horses than books. He had a natural way with animals, a patience and understanding that couldn't be taught. By the time he was 12, he was the best horse breaker on the ranch, able to gentle even the most skittish bronc. In 1898, Kate's father, who she'd been estranged from since marrying Jacob against his wishes, reached out. He was dying, he wrote, and wanted to reconcile with his only daughter before the end. Kate struggled with the decision, old hurts warring with forgiveness. Warren supported whatever choice she made but gently encouraged her to go. "You'll regret it if you don't," he said. Anger and pride are cold comfort when someone's gone. So Kate traveled to Ohio with Ruth as companion, leaving the boys with Warren and Mrs. Chen. She was gone for 2 months, and Warren missed her fiercely, realizing how much he'd come to depend on her presence. But the trip was good for Kate. She made peace with her father before he passed, and she returned home lighter somehow, an old burden lifted. The new century arrived with celebration and hope. The Triple Bar was more prosperous than ever, and Warren had expanded into horse breeding in addition to cattle. His stock was sought after throughout Wyoming and beyond. He employed 30 hands year-round now, and the ranch had become a significant economic force in the county. But success didn't change Warren. He still rose before dawn to work alongside his men. He still insisted on fairness and honesty in all dealings. He gave generously to the church and the community, remembering his own lean years, Kate's desperate flight through the snow. They endowed a scholarship for orphans at the school in Watsonville, and Kate organized a women's society that provided support for widows and single mothers. Thomas returned from law school in 1902 and opened a practice in Watsonville. He quickly became known as a skilled attorney who fought for the little guy, taking on cases against the big cattle barons who tried to squeeze out smaller ranchers. Warren couldn't have been prouder. Thomas had found his calling, and he did it with integrity and compassion. Ruth fell in love with a schoolteacher from Denver, a gentle young man named Peter who loved her wildness and encouraged her independent spirit. They married in 1903 in a beautiful ceremony at the ranch, with half the county in attendance. Warren walked his daughter down the aisle with tears in his eyes, and Kate cried openly throughout the service. They settled in Watsonville, and Peter took a position teaching at the school, with Ruth helping establish a library. William took over more and more of the ranch operations as Warren approached 50, proving himself a capable manager and innovative rancher. He had his father's eye for cattle and his mother's head for business. In 1905, at the age of 22, he married a rancher's daughter from a neighboring spread, a practical woman named Sarah who fit into the family perfectly. One evening in late 1906, Warren and Kate sat on the porch of the main house, watching the sun set over the valley they'd called home for more than 20 years. They were in their 40s now, gray touching their hair, lines marking their faces. But they were healthy and strong, blessed beyond measure. 22 years, Kate said softly. 22 years since that day in the snow. Can you believe it? Barely, Warren admitted. Sometimes it feels like yesterday, other times it feels like a lifetime ago. It was a lifetime ago, in a way. We were different people then. Younger, less certain. Look at us now. Grandparents, even. Ruth had given birth to a son earlier that year, making Warren and Kate grandparents for the first time. The joy of holding that tiny baby, seeing their daughter as a mother, had been overwhelming. It felt like the completion of some great circle. From the day Warren had held baby Thomas in the line shack to holding Ruth's son in the same room where Ruth herself had been born. I never imagined this, Warren said. Any of this. I thought I'd be lucky to own my own spread someday, maybe find a wife if I was really fortunate. But this family, this legacy, it's more than I dreamed possible. We built it together, Kate reminded him. Everything we have, we created through love and hard work and faith. You created it, Warren said. By surviving. By not giving up that day in the snow. If you'd let go, if you'd stopped fighting, none of this would exist. Thomas, Ruth, William, none of them would be here. You're the foundation everything else is built on, Kate. Kate's eyes filled with tears. Don't make me cry, Warren Nichols. I'm too old for such foolishness. You're not old. You're perfect. Just as perfect as the day I found you in that snowdrift. They sat in comfortable silence as darkness fell, the lights of the ranch house glowing warm behind them. Inside, they could hear Mrs. Chen humming as she cleaned up from dinner, William and Sarah laughing about something in the parlor. The sounds of home, of family, of a life well lived. Do you ever wonder what Jacob would think? Warren asked quietly. He rarely spoke of Kate's first husband, but sometimes he thought about the man, wondered about him. About all this, about Thomas growing up the way he did. Kate was quiet for a long moment. I think he'd be grateful, she finally said. Jacob loved Thomas so much, even though he only had a few months with him, and he loved me. He'd want us to be happy, to be safe. You gave us that, Warren. You gave us everything Jacob would have wanted for us and more. I like to think, wherever he is, he knows Thomas grew up loved and secure. That's what any father would want. Thomas is a good man, Warren said. You should be proud. You gave him his foundation those first years. I just built on what you started. We raised him together, Kate said firmly. You're his father in every way that matters. Biology doesn't make a family, Warren. Love does. And you've loved Thomas like your own from the moment you held him in that cabin." Warren pulled Kate closer, and she rested her head on his shoulder. "I did," he said. "I do. He's my son, just like Ruth and William. I couldn't love him more if I'd been there from the moment of his birth." In 1910, Thomas married a suffragette from Denver, much to the town's shock and Warren and Kate's amusement. The woman, Elizabeth, was fierce and smart and passionate about women's rights, and Thomas adored her. Their wedding was a lively affair, with speeches about equality and justice that scandalized the more conservative attendees but delighted Warren and Kate. They raised their children to think for themselves, and they were proud when their children chose partners who challenged them and made them better. That same year, William and Sarah welcomed their first child, a daughter they named Catherine after her grandmother. Kate wept when they told her, honored beyond words. The little girl was strong and healthy, with William's blonde hair and Sarah's green eyes. She was the second grandchild, and Warren was already hopelessly wrapped around her tiny finger. The Triple Bar continued to thrive under the joint management of Warren and William. Father and son made a formidable team, Warren's experience combining with William's innovation. They were among the first in the area to experiment with new breeding techniques, improving their herd's quality year after year. The ranch's success allowed Warren and Kate to be generous, sponsoring community improvements, helping struggling neighbors, supporting education and social causes. Ruth and Peter had 2 more children in quick succession, daughters who they visited often, bringing noise and joy to the ranch house. Thomas and Elizabeth settled in Watsonville permanently, Thomas's law practice flourishing, Elizabeth teaching at the school and organizing women's suffrage meetings. The family gatherings were loud and chaotic and wonderful, multiple generations filling the house with love and laughter. In 1915, Kate's health began to fail. It started with fatigue, a persistent tiredness she couldn't shake. Then came the weight loss, the lack of appetite. Dr. Matthews, now in his 70s himself, examined her thoroughly and delivered the diagnosis Warren had been dreading: cancer. The word fell like a stone into their lives, shattering the peace they'd built. The doctor said it was advanced, inoperable. She had months, maybe a year if they were lucky. There was nothing to be done but make her comfortable. Warren refused to accept it at first, riding to Denver to consult specialists, but they all said the same thing. Kate was dying. The woman who'd survived a blizzard, who'd fought death in the snow while clutching her infant son, was facing an enemy she couldn't overcome. Kate took the news with the same quiet strength she'd shown throughout her life. She cried, of course, grieving for the time she'd lose, the grandchildren she wouldn't see grow up, the life she was leaving behind. But she didn't rage or despair. Instead, she set about putting her affairs in order, spending time with each of her children and grandchildren, making memories while she could. Warren was devastated. For weeks he could barely function, going through the motions of ranch work while his heart broke. Kate was his everything, his partner, his love, his reason for getting up in the morning. The thought of life without her was unbearable. One evening, as they sat together in their room, Kate took Warren's hand. "I need you to promise me something," she said. "Anything. When I'm gone, I need you to keep living. Really living, not just existing. You have so much life left in you, Warren. Don't let my death end yours too." "Kate, I can't. You can. You must. For me, for our children, for yourself. You saved my life once, gave me 17 years more than I would have had. Now you have to save your own life by choosing to live it fully, even after I'm gone. How can I live without you? The same way I would have lived if it had been you who died." One day at a time, finding joy in small things, holding on to love and memories. And Warren, if you meet someone, years from now, someone who makes you happy, don't feel guilty. I want you to be happy to have companionship in your old age. Promise me. Warren couldn't promise that, not yet. But he promised to keep living, to be there for their children and grandchildren, to honor her memory by living well. Kate lasted 8 months from her diagnosis, far less time than the doctors had predicted. She spent her final weeks at home, surrounded by family, drifting in and out of consciousness as the pain medication made her drowsy. The children all came home, Thomas leaving his practice, Ruth and Peter bringing the children, William barely leaving her side. Even Mrs. Chen, now ancient herself, sat by Kate's bedside, holding her hand, murmuring prayers. Warren stayed with her every moment, sleeping in a chair beside the bed, holding her hand, talking to her even when he wasn't sure she could hear. He told her again about the day he'd found her in the snow, the moment he'd first looked into her gray eyes and felt something shift in his chest. He thanked her for their life together, for their children, for every moment of joy she'd given him. He told her he loved her, over and over, wanting those to be the last words she heard. Kate died on a spring morning in 1916, the windows opened to let in fresh air. Her family gathered around her. She opened her eyes one last time, looked at Warren with perfect clarity and smiled. "I'll be waiting," she whispered. Then she closed her eyes and was gone, slipping away as gently as falling asleep. Warren held her body and wept, his grief so profound it was physical pain. The children cried, holding each other, mourning their mother. Mrs. Chen said prayers in Chinese, tears streaming down her weathered face. Outside, the birds sang and the world continued on, oblivious to the fact that it had just lost one of its brightest lights. The funeral was one of the largest Watsonville had ever seen. Kate had touched so many lives with her kindness and generosity, and people came from across the county to pay their respects. They buried her in the small cemetery on a hill overlooking the ranch, with a view of the valley she'd loved. The headstone was simple: Catherine Foster Nichols, beloved wife and mother, 1864–1916. Warren had wanted to add survivor, but the children convinced him the simple inscription was better. In the months after Kate's death, Warren existed rather than lived. He went through the motions of ranch work, attended family dinners, held his grandchildren. But the light had gone out of him. He was a shell, functioning but not feeling, present but not participating. It was Thomas who finally broke through. A year after Kate's death, Thomas came to the ranch house and found his father sitting in the parlor, staring at nothing. Thomas sat down across from him and said, "Mama would be disappointed in you." Warren looked up, shocked. "What? She would. She made you promise to keep living and instead you're just waiting to die. That's not what she wanted, Papa. That's not honoring her memory." "I don't know how," Warren admitted, his voice breaking. "I don't know how to live without her." "One day at a time," Thomas said gently. "That's what she told you, wasn't it? One day at a time. You don't have to be happy, not yet, but you have to try. For her, for us, for yourself." Warren looked at his eldest son, the baby he'd first held in a freezing line shack 33 years ago, now a man of 34 with a family of his own. Thomas had Kate's eyes, her strength. Looking at him, Warren could see Kate, and it hurt, but it also helped. "All right," Warren said. "I'll try." And he did. Slowly, painfully, Warren clawed his way back to life. He threw himself into ranch work, helping William modernize operations. He spent time with his grandchildren, teaching them to ride and rope the way he'd taught his own children. He attended Thomas's court cases, Ruth's library fundraisers, family dinners, and church services. He visited Kate's grave every week, talking to her, telling her about the children and grandchildren, the ranch, his life. The years passed. The world changed around Warren. The Great War came and went, sparing his family but taking sons from other families in Watsonville. The ranch prospered even during the war years, beef in high demand. Technology advanced, automobiles replacing horses on the roads, electricity coming to even rural areas. In 1920, women gained the right to vote, and Warren thought how proud Kate would have been, how happy for Elizabeth and Ruth. He cast his ballot that November feeling Kate's presence beside him, knowing she was smiling somewhere. Warren never remarried. Despite Kate's blessing, despite the passing years, he never felt drawn to anyone else. He'd had his great love, his soul mate, and that was enough for one lifetime. He found contentment in his family, his ranch, his community. It wasn't the same as the joy he'd known with Kate, but it was enough. It was good. In 1925, Warren retired fully from ranch work, turning over ownership to William. He was 67 years old, his hair white, his body showing the wear of decades of hard work. But his mind was sharp, and he stayed involved in the ranch's operations as an advisor, enjoying watching William and Sarah run things their way. Thomas had become a respected judge, his legal career brilliant and impactful. Ruth was a grandmother herself now, Peter having retired from teaching. They lived quietly in town, surrounded by children and grandchildren, active in community affairs. The family had grown beyond Warren's ability to count, great-grandchildren appearing with increasing regularity. One winter evening in 1930, Warren sat in the parlor of the ranch house, a fire crackling in the hearth. He was 72 years old now, his body failing in small ways. His heart was weak, Dr. Matthews' son had told him, and he should take it easy. Warren had laughed at that. He'd worked hard all his life. He wasn't about to start taking it easy now, but tonight, watching the fire, he felt tired in a way that had nothing to do with physical labor. He was ready, he realized. Ready to rest, ready to see Kate again. He'd lived a good life, longer than he'd expected. He'd kept his promise to Kate, really living rather than just existing. But he was ready to join her now. Thomas and William visited that evening with their families, as they often did. The house filled with noise and laughter, grandchildren and great-grandchildren running around. Warren watched them all with contentment. This was his legacy, this family, these good people who would carry on after he was gone. Kate's legacy, too, built on the foundation of that terrible day in the snow when she'd refused to give up. Later, after everyone had gone home, Warren climbed the stairs to his bedroom slowly. Mrs. Chen had passed 5 years ago, and he missed her, another link to Kate broken. But her daughter kept house for him now, and she'd left a fire burning in the hearth of his room. Warren got ready for bed, his movements slow but steady. He looked at the photograph on his bedside table taken on his and Kate's 10th anniversary. They were both smiling, Warren's arm around Kate, Thomas, Ruth, and William standing in front of them. They looked so young, so happy. They had been happy, so very happy. Warren got into bed, pulling the quilts up. Outside, snow was falling, just like it had been that day 46 years ago when he'd found Kate and Thomas. He could almost hear dancers' hoofbeats, almost see that dark shape in the snow that had changed his life forever. "I'm coming, Kate," he whispered to the darkness. "I kept my promise. I lived, but I'm ready now. I'm ready to come home to you." He closed his eyes, and his last thought was of Kate smiling at him, her gray eyes bright, her hand reaching for his. Then Warren Nichols slipped away as gently as Kate had, going to join the woman he'd loved for 46 years. The woman he'd saved from the snow. the woman who'd saved him right back by teaching him what love truly meant. They found him the next morning, peaceful in his sleep, a small smile on his weathered face. The family mourned, but there was comfort in knowing he'd lived a long, full life, that he'd been ready to go, that he was with Kate again. They buried him next to her on the hill overlooking the valley, their headstones side by side, together in death as they'd been in life. The Triple Bar Ranch continued under William's ownership, then his sons, thriving through the Depression and beyond. Thomas's descendants continued to practice law in Wyoming, fighting for justice and fairness. Ruth's grandchildren became teachers and librarians, spreading knowledge and fostering learning. The family Warren and Kate had created continued to grow and flourish, generation after generation, all of them tracing their lineage back to that snowy day in 1884 when a cowboy had found a woman and baby in a snowdrift and carried them both to warmth and safety. And if sometimes, on winter evenings when the snow falls thick and fast, ranch hands claim to see two figures walking together on the hill where Warren and Kate are buried, well, no one thinks much of it. Some love stories don't end with death. Some love stories echo through time, testaments to the power of survival, determination, and above all, love. Warren and Kate's story was one of those, a love born in snow and desperation, nurtured through years of hard work and dedication, and lasting beyond death itself, an inspiration to all who heard it, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, hope and love can bloom, creating something beautiful that lasts forever.